He was the richest man in human history. Not a tech mogul, not a king from Europe. His name was Mansa Musa. His wealth was so vast, when he traveled across North Africa, he gave away gold like most of us give away spare change. He handed out so much of it that gold itself lost value. Prices soared. Economies buckled. Egypt's markets needed over a decade to recover. Imagine inflation so bad, your savings meant less every week. Rent rising, food doubling, and no one in power lifting a finger. Now imagine, it was all caused by one man, just passing through your city, handing out money to strangers. This wasn't charity. This was power. The kind of power that doesn't just buy cities. It rewrites the rules of wealth itself. He led an empire built on gold, salt, and silence. And when he finally stepped into the spotlight, the world would never forget it. In the year 1324, Mansa Musa set out on a journey to Mecca. It wasn't just a pilgrimage, it was a procession. Over 60,000 people traveled with him. Nobles, soldiers, entertainers, merchants, and slaves. 100 camels carried gold, not coins, not jewelry. Gold dust, gold bricks. Gold so pure it shimmered like sunlight. At every stop, Cairo, Medina, Mecca, he gave freely. He built mosques. He handed gold to the poor. He made sure no one went hungry. Sounds like a dream, right? But in Cairo, the dream turned into panic. With so much gold flooding the markets, merchants raised their prices. Then those prices rose again. Bread, grain, salt, everything cost more. And just like that, the people who worked the hardest, the shopkeepers, the builders, the ones carrying water under the sun, they couldn't keep up. One man's generosity became everyone's struggle. It took Egypt 12 years to recover. Mansa Musa didn't destroy Cairo with weapons. He did it with kindness and gold. They called it a pilgrimage, but it was a flex the world had never seen. And the question everyone began to ask was, where did all that wealth come from? What kind of empire could produce this much gold and still have more? Musa didn't strike gold once. His empire sat on top of it. The Mali Empire controlled the gold mines of Bambouk and Bure, regions so rich that rivers sparkled with gold flakes. Trade caravans crossed the Sahara loaded with salt and spices, only to return with cloth, books, and goods from distant lands. But gold was the engine. Imagine living in a place where the earth beneath your feet held more wealth than 100 tech startups. That was Musa's world. He turned Timbuktu into a city of scholars, built mosques that touched the skies, filled libraries with knowledge from Persia to Egypt. His wealth wasn't hidden in vaults. It was spent in stone, in people, in legacy. Today we measure wealth by bank accounts and stock charts. Back then, wealth was power that echoed in the streets, in the call to prayer, in the silence of knowledge being passed from elder to child. And still, he remained a mystery to much of the world. Western textbooks barely mention him, but in West Africa, his name is still carried like gold dust in the wind. To understand Mansa Musa's power, you have to understand the land he ruled. It was called the Mali Empire. It stretched across what we now know as West Africa, from the forests of Guinea to the edge of the Sahara. It wasn't just big, it was structured, Organized, efficient. At the heart of it stood two cities, Niani, the royal capital, and Timbuktu, the jewel of intellect. Niani was Musa's home, where decisions were made, where caravans launched, where the palace rose like carved sandstone against the Sahel sky. Timbuktu. That was something else. Timbuktu was where gold met wisdom. A city of scribes, teachers, and traders. People came from Morocco, Egypt, and even the Middle East, just to study there. While kings in Europe fought over borders, scholars in Timbuktu debated astronomy, law, and theology. The Sankore University held thousands of handwritten manuscripts, scripture, science, and stories. These weren't just books. They were vaults of African knowledge. And around those schools, bustling markets, camel caravans, the sound of languages from across the continent. Mali was connected. It ran on trade, diplomacy, and shared power. Salt moved from the mines of Tagaza, ivory and kola nuts from the south, books from the north. Everything had a place. Everyone had a role. The roads weren't paved, but they were alive. Imagine walking through a street where you smell incense, hear Arabic and Mande spoken side by side, and see children learning beside market stalls. This was their world. Hot, dusty, wise, alive. And through it all, Musa stood at the center, not just as a king, but as a symbol. A reminder that wealth isn't just what you keep, it's what you build. And what he built still echoes today. They called it the Keita dynasty, a bloodline of kings, and Musa stood at the peak. Inside the palace walls of Niani, power moved quietly. There were no marble halls, no golden thrones, but there was order, and there was fear. Mansa Musa was both revered and distant. He governed through layers of counselors, generals, and trusted elders. He didn't rule with shouts. He ruled with silence. A silence that carried weight. A silence that let others speak first, before he decided what truth would follow. In his court, people bowed low. But behind the ceremony were systems, tax collectors, trade overseers, guards who kept peace without spectacle. Musa wasn't just a king. He was a CEO of an empire, with spreadsheets replaced by scribes, and data replaced by tribute. And what about Musa himself? How did he live? He wore robes woven with silk from the east. He bathed in perfumed water. He read from Qurans written by hand. And every morning, he heard petitions from the people. But don't picture a tyrant. He was generous. He forgave debts. He listened to scholars. Yet none of it made him soft. Disloyalty met with exile. Or worse. This was a man raised in power, who never forgot what it took to keep it. To the people, he was chosen by fate. To his court, he was the fulcrum. Balance him wrong, and the whole machine trembled. And still, he walked the streets of Niani sometimes, disguised, listening, watching, because for Musa, power didn't sit on a throne. It moved among the people. We step outside the palace and into the lives of the everyday. What did it mean to live in the Mali Empire? How did people eat, work, rest, and stay cool under the relentless African sun? Most people weren't nobles or scholars. They were farmers, herders, traders, and builders. They grew millet, sorghum, and rice in fields fed by the Niger River. They cooked over clay stoves, ate from shared bowls, and gathered under baobab trees to talk and tell stories. Children learned by watching, by listening, by doing. Not from screens or books, but from elders, passing down knowledge through rhythm, repetition, and song. Their homes were built from earth, mud brick walls, thatched roofs, designed to breathe and survive the heat. Courtyards were central, spaces for rest, work, prayer, and shade. Music flowed through the villages, not for entertainment, but for memory. The griots sang of ancestors and battles, of harvests and justice, their voices tying the present to the past. The empire ran on more than gold. It ran on community, on tradition, on an understanding that wealth wasn't just material. It was shared labor, shared stories, and shared survival. And in so many ways, it mirrored us. Just like today, people worried about food, family, faith. They debated politics in the markets, raised children with care, and found peace where they could in the middle of chaos. The world changes, but humanity, we've always been the same. What happened after Musa? What was his true legacy? And why did the Western world forget him? Mansa Musa returned from Mecca a legend, but legends don't rule forever. He died sometime around 1337. The empire passed to his son, but the weight of his legacy? That was harder to carry. Trade continued. Timbuktu stayed vibrant. But something shifted. Over time, the gold routes changed. New powers rose in the north. Europe, once watching from the edges, began its rise, and Mali began to fade. Not all at once, not in flames, but slowly, like a star that shined too bright. Still, the blueprint Musa left, it remained. Cities still stood, mosques still called the faithful, and those ancient manuscripts? Some survive to this day. But ask someone in the West about Mansa Musa. Most won't know his name. Why? Because history, like wealth, is unevenly distributed. Western textbooks praised kings who conquered by sword. Musa conquered by presence, by generosity, by intellect, and that doesn't fit the usual narrative. But his people remember, in Mali, in Senegal, in the songs of griots, in the pages of ancient Arabic texts, in the quiet pride of a continent too often ignored. And now, maybe, you remember too. Mansa Musa wasn't just a king. He was a mirror of what leadership could be. He showed us that wealth isn't what you hoard, it's what you give. That power isn't how loud you speak, it's how long your silence echoes. And that legacy isn't carved in stone, it's carried in story. This was the story of Mansa Musa, a man richer than any billionaire today, but remembered, not for what he took, for what he left behind. This has been Lost Empires Chronicles. If you felt this story, subscribe, share, and join us next time as we uncover the forgotten giants of history.